Reading 69 from the Psychological Commentaries on the Teaching of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky by Dr. Maurice Nicoll, Volume 3. Great Animal House, March 8, 1947. Further note on undeveloped functions. If we had all our ordinary centers developed, our entire life would be different. I am not speaking of higher centers, for, as this work teaches, higher centers are fully developed and working in us all the time. But we cannot hear them. We are non-receptive of their vibrations. Our ordinary centers being both in a mess and also not rightly developed. For example, the state of emotional center is such that it is impossible to hear the continual meanings coming from higher emotional center, and this is due to its being choked up with useless, negative emotions collected since early life, chiefly by imitation. Let us speak about the instinctive center and what can be developed in connection with it. One function of instinctive center is sensation. What would you conceive to be a development of sensation? Now, every function can be directed outwards and inwards, that is, be connected with external attention or internal attention, to use the work terms. Here, I speak of a development of the function of sensation when turned outwards. Suppose you never notice anything outside you with any kind of precision. You never notice, say, how maps go, or the shapes of different trees, or forms and arrangements of things. You say, I really cannot remember how it went exactly. In such a case, outer sensation is undeveloped. There was an exercise for this. Noticing a number of objects for a short time and then describing them in detail. This develops attention in sensation, turned to an outer object. That is also why drawing and painting are useful and can refresh one. This use of a rarely used function always refreshes. The constant use of the same main function exhausts. There is a wealth of new ground in everyone. But people will traverse the same worn paths. For this reason, the work begins with change of thinking. This work, it is said, and repeatedly said, is to make you think in a new way. That is the beginning of the whole matter. Now, all the ideas of the work, if learnt and assimilated over a period of years, open up the mind in new directions and alter one's whole way of viewing things. That is, this work develops a person's thinking. In fact, people learn to think. This general idea stands at the head of all talks about functions and new development of centers. The work, by changing the thinking, makes it possible for other changes to take place. If one's mind remains just the same, if one's views and prejudices remain just the same, so will one's thoughts remain just the same, and everything in oneself will be just the same. The magic of the work starts from new ideas for thinking with. The work begins by shifting the mind from its mechanically set position. Everything else can then shift a little. Yet, is it not strange that people always think they can change if they wish? They imagine they are free, but find excuses, not seeing that only a new force, a new set of ideas coming from another direction, can make it possible for any change to take place. So remember that in all these and subsequent talks about development of centers, it is assumed that the first necessary condition is fulfilled, namely, contact with a conscious teaching that can make it possible to change the mind. I remind you again that the Gospels start from metivoi, change of mind. Let us take emotional perception. Some have this rather than perception through sensation. Emotional perception is connected with the emotional parts of centers, especially with the intellectual part of emotional center. This is very quick, and a thought perceived through this part in a second may take many hours to write down. The intellectual part of emotional center is open to higher emotional center and capable of receiving, in a fragmentary way, its vibrations of higher meaning. The working or vibrations of a psychic center become conscious to us as meanings on different levels. Where with the lower center we see only one meaning, we see many interblending meanings with the higher center. Using our ordinary, more or less mechanical parts of centers, we see very little meaning. That is why we feel a staleness in experiences. But a flash of higher meaning, which by work on oneself, according to what is taught, is always possible, gives an entirely new range of meanings. We see things in a new way, our problems, and so on. What was ordinary and dull seems transformed. This work is to transform impressions. So try not to see everything as you mechanically do, and not to identify with your usual way of taking things. Step aside from your habit of seeing everything. First, by noticing how you take things daily. Each center and part of a center can see the same thing in quite new ways. Now, if all centers were working in us, everything could be seen in many different ways. Take thinking. Thinking is a function of intellectual center. Now take feeling. Feeling is a function of emotional center. It sees a thing, a problem, quite differently from the way in which thinking does. The two are incompatible. That is, they can never meet. One thinks about a situation, then one should, if possible, be able to feel about the same situation. You will never bring thinking and feeling to the same state or point of agreement. So each center gives a different interpretation of situations. One has then to learn to use both interpretations in this case. At this point, the individuality emerges, which can take something from thinking and take something from feeling and make some resultant, some harmony, some decision. This is the harmonizing of the centers, but it is only possible by not identifying with one center and its functions and excluding the rest. Is it not true that at different times the same problem looks different? Do not think this is weakness of so-called will. It is the beginning of growth, the seeing of the same situation from many sides. To follow one function exclusively and its judgments, say thinking, is to be a slave to one center. That is to be one-sided. For that reason, the work speaks of being balanced man. Number 4 man. That is, a man in whom all centers can be called on, with all their different meanings, their different interpretations of the situation. It is like a guitar with many strings. To pluck one all the time is not to reach any harmony. A balanced man can reach his own harmony, seeing a thing through one center in this way, through another center in a different way, and so on, and making a resultant or harmony of all these different viewpoints. This is balanced man. But an unbalanced man sees through only one window, one part of a center. He therefore has no breadth of being. He is narrow, a man using one tiny function for the whole meaning and interpretation of life. Such a man may seem to have great strength and inflexibility in life. Yet, from the work point of view, he is the weakest man, the most mechanical man, the most one-sided man. One-sidedness in the work is a sign of weakness of being.